Now in this video, we're going to take a look at using the 3D features in Photoshop to create a macro lens effect. And what we're going for here is that you've probably seen those images where it's like a close-up of some textured paper, and it's so close, it's a macro shot, it's so close in that you can see a little bit of depth of field, but you subtly see the texture of the paper. I mean, it's really that close. And we're going to achieve that effect with just a simple texture and 3D here inside Photoshop. So there's no camera involved at all. It's a virtual camera. So again, it starts with a texture, and this is a simple texture I've got here. It's just a stock texture image. And I'm going to go ahead and create a new document to build the effect in. So let's go to the File menu, go to New, and I'm going to make it a square format document. So 2500 by 2500 is just fine, and we'll go ahead and do that. And I'm going to go ahead and create a new blank layer, and I'm going to give this a somewhat off-white color fill. I don't want it to be pure white, and I don't need it to be really dark, but I'm going to give it kind of a, let's do this. It's about a 20% gray. That looks pretty good. Okay. And let's actually go a little bit higher than that, a little bit. Okay, there we go. About a 25% gray, I think will be good. And then I'm going to go into the 3D menu, and we're going to turn this into a 3D postcard. So you just go to New Mesh from Layer, and then just choose Postcard, and it immediately puts it into three-dimensional space. Now, unlike three-dimensional or 3D objects that you extrude, this is in three-dimensional space, but it's still a flat object. If I rotate it around, you can see it's still that flat two-dimensional layer. We just have the ability to edit it into three-dimensional space now. So I'm going to go back to that texture image, and I'm going to go ahead and remove the color information, and let's go ahead and do a Command A and select all, and then copy it to the clipboard. Now we go back to my image here. Now on this, we're going to apply that texture as a bump map, not as a regular texture map. So let's go ahead and open up the 3D panel and the Properties panel. There we go. Now we have just the one layer mesh, which is layer 1 here. So I'm going to go ahead and select that right here. And then let's go to the bump property, which is part of the surface properties here. You see bump right there. Go to the menu over here where it says New Texture. So just click on that, choose New Texture. And we'll go ahead and make it a little bit bigger than the original document. So let's go ahead and make it 3000. And it's going to go ahead and open it up, and let's paste that texture in there. And the texture is just the right, oh, it is just the right size. There, that's perfect. Now, I don't need the texture at its full intensity. Right now, it's a pretty contrasting, very obvious texture. So I'm going to go ahead and fill the background layer with gray. And then I'm just going to lower the opacity of this layer to around 75. Maybe let's go a little bit. Let's go like 55 on that. Now, of course, it's layers. We can always go back and adjust it later, but we'll start there and see what we get. So that is done with the bump map file. So we're going to close it, save the changes. Now we don't see an obvious change because on a 3D postcard, there are no lights. You can only see a bump texture if there is a light shining on it. Now when you create a postcard, it doesn't create any lights. If I go into the light section here, you'll notice that there is the white image-based light, but no point light or spotlight or anything like that. So what I'm going to do first is turn off the IBL, and that's going to basically make the image go dark. Actually, no, let's not make it go off. Let's actually dial it down a little bit. So when I'm doing this slider, that's actually lowering the intensity of the image-based light, which is just a white fill, global fill on the object there. But what I am going to do is go ahead and add a new point light here. And immediately you can see that texture reacting to this light here. Now that light's a little bit too intense, so let's just kind of bring that and dial it back a little bit here. So there we go. Now, if I zoom in, now you can see that that texture is reacting to the light and the direction the light's coming from. It's generating the shadows based on that. So what I'm going to do now is actually I'm going to create another new document. Let's go ahead and make this one pretty small. Let's do it like 1000 by 500 pixels. Ooh, Nate, that's really small. Let's do like more like 2000 by 1000. There we go. Okay. So now I'm going to take this new bump mapped object. I'm going to grab that layer and just drag it into this document here. Now it looks bigger, of course, because this is a lower res document, so we want to get close in on this object. But I'm going to select current view, which is the current camera on the object. Now, like an actual camera, the lower the number in the field of view in the millimeter lenses here, the wider the angle you get. So I'm going to drop this to around 10. And that, of course, pushes the object back. So we need to like drag the camera forward. And now I'm going to rotate the camera so we see this texture at an angle. And now you can see I'm getting this kind of cool macro effect where I can see the texture and everything looks pretty good. I'm actually going to make that angle of lens a little bit bigger. Let's go with 5. And as I can move that around, you can see that the texture looks pretty good. Now, if I wanted to go in there and add an element of text, perhaps, let's go into that original texture layer, and let's go ahead and just add some text here. It just says, well, it's supposed to say greetings. But let's go and do the all too gaudy font, which everybody loves to hate, which is Zapfino. There we go. Gives me these cool swirls and everything like that. Yes, I know we rarely use this font, but you know, sometimes you got to give it a break. So I'm going to go ahead and center that text in the document here. Let's make it, close it in a little bit, maybe make it a little bit smaller. And there we go. So I'm going to close this and now save the changes, and there that text is going to appear now on that three-dimensional texture there. So there we go. So I'm actually going to rotate my, now notice I'm rotating my camera view. I'm not rotating the object. You want to rotate the camera view when you're doing this. And that's going to give me a rather interesting angle on that text element there. I'm going to go ahead and make the background black so it helps blend it a little bit better. So we're zeroed in on this. So we've got the bump map and everything like that. Now you see that square of the light because we haven't done a render yet on this. But I want to add one more thing on this before I add the render element. And actually, let's go back over here real quick before we do that. Select the layer 1, back in those properties. You'll have the shine on by default on almost anything you create. So let's bring the shine down on that one. And specular, I'm going to go and leave it. Okay. But what I want to do is back in that current view where the camera settings are, we're going to go over here where it says depth of field. Now in the depth setting, we're going to set this to 2. And that's going to apply a blur to the object, creating this depth of field blur. But what you can do is determine where the focal point is going to be. By simply holding on the Option key and your cursor will turn into a little target. And you just simply click on the object where you want the focus to be, and then there it is. Now to make it a little bit more prominent, I'm going to increase the blur to 3 just so you can see what's going on here. So Option clicked to set the focus. Now I'm going to do a render on this 3D. Let's go to 3D and then choose render. And it's going to start to render the element. And you can see it gets a little fuzzy at first, but then as it makes each pass, it gets a little bit more refined. But now you can see we've got this really cool macro effect of a close-up of a paper texture. And that's simply using that texture and then bring it in there. Now, if you feel that the bump texture is too much or too little, you can simply go into that object, select layer 1 in the 3D panel again, and in the bump property over here, just increase or decrease if you want to see more of the texture. Like it's default set to 10, but I'm going to see a little bit less, so I'm going to drop it down to 5. And then let's play with the angle of our object a little bit more. Just kind of zoom in here. Get a really extreme angle there. And then we'll do another render, and then there I have my macro effect pretty quickly and easily. Now my light looks a little bright here. So again, let's go in there and just dial that light down a little bit. And that looks pretty good. So once you have everything in place, you can go in there and adjust the lighting and the position and even the camera settings depending on the type of macro angle you want to see it at. But you can get some pretty interesting results with a simple postcard layer inside Photoshop. And again, remember that text is editable. You can go back into that layer 1, just double click on it, and there it is on the with the original text layer. You can go in there and change it whatever you want to say without having to go and recreate the entire 3D element in there. But there you have getting macro effects quickly and easily using Photoshop 3D.